Flanagan 34 minutes. They had 5 guys play 20 minutes plus, and then that was it. That was all the help they got. Or no, sorry, 6 guys. 6 guys played 20 minutes plus, and that was all the help they got. Whereas we had everybody played double-digit minutes but Lior.
We love it to see it. All right, we
Mm-hmm.
should be live. Let me.
It says we're live streaming on YouTube in our corner. Let me see if I can pull that link up.
Yeah, I always like seeing it on YouTube just to make sure before we. Yep, I see it
Yep.
live online. I'm gonna roll with it. And then let's go. The box scores. And then we will start recording. 91.7. All right. 3, 2. All right, guys. Matt and Ben get to do another victory podcast. And this one was a little more
Woo!
significant than Vanderbilt. A sweep of Ole Miss, winning on the road in Oxford. This was the most hyped I've seen an Ole Miss game for an Auburn, Auburn visiting there. It was a good
They had their
atmosphere.
stars out, man.
They're undefeated at home. They were undefeated when leading at the half. Not anymore. Auburn dealt probably one of their best wins of the year. First official quad one victory. And it was on the road, and we had a bunch of guys contribute. So a lot of good things to get into. We're doing it a day late. We were all kind of out of pocket yesterday, but I just got to watch it on Sunday, which is when we're recording this. Great win, and a great way to kind of cap off the first half of the SEC schedule, which we'll talk about. Ben, what were your thoughts?
I mean, like you said, there's no underestimating how huge this win was for us. We saw this team do a lot of things it has not done before. They scored 56 points in the second half. They shot better than 40% from three on the road with a Nike basketball. This has been the season of getting some monkeys off our back, and I think we got quite a few of them off in Oxford.
We're 18-4, Ben. Like I think the season goes fast, and I'm not sure people zoom out enough to really. We're 18-4. We're 7-2 in the league. We're in second place. We're a game back. We'll get to that, later in the episode. But Auburn's in a really good place, and half the SEC schedule's over. 7-2 is probably as good as we could have hoped for. And we've seen some holes on this team, but overall, I mean, you have to love where this team sits. We've talked about the metrics all year. The metrics are great, but they've won a lot of games, and they've let some slip away and lost some close ones that they wish they'd had back. But overall, really good body of work for this team, and this was a special win with the Flanagan aspect of it, sweeping them. Ole Miss is a team we play twice every year, and Kermit Davis had our number sometimes, but Chris Beard coming up, he is going to get this program better at Ole Miss. So it's great to get a sweep of them. And what were you
Matt, this
saying?
is 3 years in a row. We have now swept Ole Miss. You got to enjoy these moments because you're right. Chris Beard has this program trending in the absolute right direction.
Yeah.
Don't knock the fact that they had a weaker out of conference schedule with the fact that they won a lot of games. Nobody had still beaten them at home,
Yeah.
as you said earlier. They had a lot of confidence. They had their stars out. They wore the powder blue jerseys at home. They brought every good bit of juju they could. And Ole Miss needed this game as badly as we did. If they wanted to stay in consideration for the regular season title, they needed to win tonight. We handed them their fourth loss in SEC play, which doesn't quite mathematically eliminate them, but now they're in the middle of a very, very dense pack that includes teams like Kentucky, Mississippi State, Florida, Texas A&M. They were in contention for a first round and second round bye in the SEC tournament that now is going to be much more difficult. I mean, you see
Well,
just how important it is to hold serve at home.
yeah, for sure. They're in that. I thought Jackson did a good job of kind of framing it. I think Ole Miss is a top half SEC team, right around that middle pack, but on the better half of the middle pack. And this was a great game. I mean, honestly, I thought it was high level basketball. Ole Miss shot the lights out, played really confidently. You can see why they've had a lot of success in that building. They're more athletic than they've been in years past. They have some dudes out there. It was a great game, and it took a lot from Auburn to. And we'll talk about some of the historic nature of the second half as we go, but this took a lot from Auburn to get this win. I'm hoping this can be a big confidence booster for them coming back from down 9 on the road. It was 13 or 14. We were down in the first half at one point. And to not only come back and win, we saw at Alabama how hard that is to turn the comeback into a victory. But they did it
Mm-hmm.
with flying colors, and they did it on the offensive end where we've been kind of nervously watching game to game. Can that offense with that many weapons, can it return on the road in an SEC game against a good opponent that's going to be in the NCAA tournament most likely? And they didn't.
Oh yeah, and again, we saw against Alabama and against Mississippi State, we saw this team storm back. We saw this team take a lead at around the 10-minute mark, and we hadn't been able to quite finish it. Today, we were helped a lot by our depth. If you look at the minute breakdown, if you're watching with us here on YouTube, you can see that Ole Miss's guys played monster minutes. And although we were worried a little bit about the shortening of our rotation as we got deeper into SEC play, you can see it again. There's a lot of balance here. We had a lot of guys playing double-digit minutes. We got valuable minutes again from guys like Chaney Johnson and Dylan Cardwell. Dylan was able to stay out of foul trouble this time, which I think was huge. Get Janai some much-needed rest. But let's get into some MVP talk. You ready to talk MVPs? This is a tough one.
Yeah, definitely. Because this was a game for the depth. This was like, you and I have had a little debates about how many guys do we have, how many dudes do we have, and I've tried to stay pretty steady that we have 7 guys that I think are offensive threats in this league on a night-to-night basis. It's not going to be all 7 every night, but I feel like we have 7 dudes who can create a shot and score the ball for us, which is just different than I think that's more than we've had in the past. And if you look at the breakdown, 6 guys in double figures. So it's KD Johnson, Jalen Williams, Trey Donaldson, Janai Broome, Chad Baker-Mazara, Denver Jones, and then Aiden Holloway, I thought played a lot better for some of his struggles. He had 6 points, hit a 3, got to the line, got out in transition. And even playing less than Trey, and we'll talk about that in a minute, those are my 7 dudes. And the 7 dudes scored, 84 of the 91 to win the game.
Yeah, and huge, once again, we talked about it just last episode, and it seems prescient. We got some points from Chris Moore.
Well,
It
yeah.
wasn't a ton. It wasn't a ton, but Chris Moore hit a shot. He played some excellent defense, which we knew he could, and we know he has. And he actually took one of Lior's typical second half rotations. We did see Lior Berman come in and get his one rotation in the first half, but we did not go back to him in the second half. When Chad Baker-Mazara needed a rest, we went back to Chris Moore the whole time through. And I think that says a lot about how we're going to manage this team going forward. I mean, you look up and down this board, there's guys everywhere. KD Johnson, perfect, 4 of 4 from the field, hit his only 3-pointer, hit both of his free throws, 3 assists, 11 points in 13 minutes. Talk about efficiency.
Yeah, 0 turnovers. 0 turnovers, man. Like KD, that's as good as it gets from him. And in the second half, he was part of that onslaught that just kept coming and kept coming. And obviously the exclamation point at the end, most joyous technical foul in the world, getting a putback. I hadn't seen KD dunk in a game until this year on a breakaway, let alone a putback over Flanagan. It was wonderful.
And just it's something we've watched other teams do to us. Somebody crashing in on that board to finish off a shot. It was nice to see us put that exclamation point on. And even Bruce wasn't too mad about it. He brought KD over and said, yeah, you can get that one. That's fine. You're continuing.
But you're right. Like, I was just going to continue through. I mean, Janai was amazing at the second half. Janai was, he took over a game in a way. I don't know if we've seen a center. I mean, Kessler definitely on the defensive end at times 2 years ago, but this was different. This was from 3, bullying guys in the post. We were finding him with the ball. And then on defense, he had, I thought, one of the standout. The game was still like, it was a 6-8, 10-point game. We were up, and Flanagan isolates against him one-on-one. We've seen Flanagan do it so many times in an Auburn uniform or not. And Janai just completely destroyed him in the lane and stayed with him, blocked his shot, took his lunch, forced the turnover. It was amazing.
Went down the court. And what did he do next? He hit a 3-pointer.
Yeah.
At 6'11". It was quite possibly the most Auburn moment of the game. To block Alan Flanagan, to go down the field, hit a 3-pointer to stretch the lead to double digits with about 6 minutes to go, and know that, all right, the game's now feeling like it's out of reach. But Matt, you might have skipped over the most important statistic of all. Can you tell me who led the Auburn Tigers in assists in a game in which we had 25?
I was just about to say it. I had no idea that he had this many. And if you're making Janai's case, 7 assists and one turnover. And there was a pass to the corner that was just magnificent that he made. And he led the team in rebounds. Jalen led us with 16, but Janai had 15. And then he led the team in rebounding with Chad Baker-Mazara. He led the team in assists, one turnover. And it just felt like Janai, everybody contributed in the second half, but Janai really, when the game was in the balance. We've talked about that this year. It's going to be hard. I want us to talk about these other guys because they had great
Well,
games, but
let's 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 leave Janai on the shelf for a minute because his all of his damage was really done in the second half. But in that first half, our two best offensive weapons were Trey Donaldson and Jalen Williams.
Yep.
Trey Donaldson once again got the starting nod over Aiden Holloway tonight. He played more minutes. He played 25 minutes to Aiden's 15, which if I was a betting man, I think those numbers are going to be pretty similar the rest of the way. I think Aiden is at his best right now in this offense as a facilitator. He had another night, 3 assists to 1 turnover. That's an incredible ratio for an 18-year-old kid. And so when he comes on the floor, even though he's not scoring a ton, he was back tonight or last night to playing that winning basketball. But Trey Donaldson hit 2 3-pointers to open the game up and finished with 6 assists. 6 assists! And only beautiful. 1 turnover.
And you're right. Aiden has had games this year where he's hit the shots early and he's kind of gotten us going. And Trey, when things were getting pretty dark, Ole Miss was hitting everything early. Like Trey hit the first 2 threes, had 6 early points, got us rolling. I thought Trey did a great job. He's still every once in a while. His 1 turnover is really bad, but like he finds and I think Bruce and Stephen Pearl have a hard time. Like they really, Ryan used to text us about this, that man, they get on Trey pretty hard because he's a returning player and they expect a lot from him, I know. But Trey was good. And I think Trey this is maybe not the place to talk about it, but I kind of agree with you. I think there's enough there the last 4 weeks or so that it kind of feels like Trey might be the starter and the finisher. We'll see when things get tight late in one of these big quad 1 games coming up. But Trey's doing a great job. He started the season as the starter. He's played it well as a backup. There's just there's a level-headedness to him. There's a competitiveness to him. And there's just a size. He's a football player, right? He played. Yeah. I guess I can say that in reference to a player.
Only because the broadcasters bring it up every single game.
but he does look different. I mean, he plays the game differently because of that. And he played really, really well and gave us great point guard minutes for sure.
And you talk about his frustrating turnover. We saw some of those from Jalen Williams in the first half too. And I had to do what you always recommend whenever I start getting hard on Jalen. I got to pull up that box score because he had 2 bad turnovers trailing towards the end of the first half when we were trying to make the game closer. And I was thinking, oh man, what is Jalen doing? He's costing us so much. Wait. 2 turnovers. 2 turnovers. It's going to happen in basketball for a guy that's going to handle the ball as much as he could. But he was aggressive early. He was attacking inside hard. I wish Jackson was here to talk about Jalen's thunderous dunks because he had a couple of them just flying in there looking like he was angry at the rim. He was tired of missing shots, and I can't blame him. And he had 5 rebounds, 2 assists, a classic Jalen game. Middle of the pack, great all-around performance.
Yeah, and just, again, just quietly, I would have never guessed he led the team in scoring until I looked at the box score. It's classic. Yep. It's classic Jalen Williams. So great game from him. I don't think he was the MVP. I think he's bothering me a little bit defensively. I think he's just a half. I don't know. He is typically playing the most minutes because they just don't want Chaney on the floor. I don't think more than 10 or 12 a game. But no, there's no excuse. You're a 5th year. Like, I think he just needs to be a step more intense on the defensive end. That's what I'm looking for from Jalen. But great game. I just don't think he's MVP. How about Chad Baker-Mazara? We've seen the ups and downs of him in SEC play, but man, he hit threes. He hit 3 of them. And he had 9 rebounds. He's so small, but he's 6'7", 6'8". Like he is a real threat on the glass. And I thought he played really well.
And this was the first time I have seen him in an SEC game where I feel like there was some similar competition, look like one of the more athletic guys on the floor. He was out there with some big boys from Ole Miss. Morrell is 6'4", Flanagan is 6'6", so he's got a little bit of size on them, but he doesn't have the weight. He's a lean looking guy out there. When you see him with these starting SEC guys, you can tell just why people were reluctant to take a chance on his game. But he looked fast. He looked aggressive. He was cutting hard to the basket. You could see him crashing the rim, trying to get those rebounds. We out-rebounded Ole Miss. Let's see here. Total, it looks like Wow, by
40,
almost 20. By am I doing this math
16.
right? 16? By
Yeah.
16. We out rebounded them by 16. That was one of the huge stats against Alabama and against Mississippi State. We didn't win the rebounding battle. And a lot of it had to do with, like you were talking about with Jalen, like seeming like we're a step slow, like we're waiting for the ball to come to us instead of going to get it. And we have to talk about the magic moment that has taken over the internet by storm, which is that when this team went in at halftime, Chad Baker Mazzara kicked the coaches out of the locker room.
Yeah.
And Bruce was saying that everybody looked calm, everybody looked ready. And I like that about this team. I like that they're calm. I like that they're focused, but I would love to see just a little bit more fire. And I think we got that tonight from our trash talker and Espanol, Chad Baker Mazzara. This team came out and they were so much more aggressive in the second half, but they were aggressive in a way that was under control. It was all within the system. Everything went inside out. We talked about the monster second half that Janai had. I think a lot of that comes from this leadership and the leadership that you saw from Chad Baker Mazzara to call these guys out and tell them to play their game.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it because Jalen said that in the post game, and that's kind of how that got out. Um, First, I love talking about this stuff, right? Because we are not in the locker room. We don't get to be around the team. We've had a lot of interviews with a bunch of coaches and stuff, but you don't always get the full picture. Um, it says a lot. It really does on a team with veterans who have been here. Um, for Chad Baker Mazzara to not only have I think it's been cool to watch him. He loves playing for Auburn. Like, I think he relishes the opportunity that
Oh,
they
yeah.
gave him. He's playing on a really good team in the SEC, and he is playing with a joy that is contagious. And it is cool on a team where we've questioned Jalen at times, right? Is Jalen that fiery guy? Is Janai that fiery guy, that leader? And look, on a team with 11 guys playing, you're more of a band of brothers more than a one leader kind of team. But like, great to see that a newcomer of all people can like rally the troops a little bit. And I'm sure there were other guys involved in that too. But even just to defer to and for guys to kind of listen and take that seriously, I just think that's a good sign for the connectedness we've talked about. And the difference in this game, before I forget, I don't know if you felt this way, but like the Alabama game, I use the term letting go of the rope. Like there was just that
Mm-hmm.
stretch in the first half that really was the last 15 minutes of the first half where we just kind of like let a few possessions go and weren't really competing. I didn't feel like that at all in the first half of this game. I thought we were competing well. I thought we were defending pretty well, but Ole Miss was making shots and they were, you
Yeah.
know, we made some mistakes, but I didn't feel like there was that team exhale during the game where we were kind of giving up a little bit. And in this, so like I think going into halftime with that, there was enough. I just thought it was different, and I'm glad we responded so well. And credit to Chad Baker Mazzara for like continuing to lean into this new team he's on, and he's making plays, he's making shots, and honestly, he's bringing so many things around his potential weaknesses, and it impresses me. Even if it's not every night, even if it's not every game, he provides a spark to this team, like we've been talking about all year.
And again, all you have to do is look at the rebounding. I mean, that is your hustle stat. When you see a guy that is playing hard, it's reflected in the rebounds. Are you going after the ball like it belongs to you? And that was Chad Baker Mazzara tonight. Our Twitter poll has Chad Baker Mazzara as the MVP, 63, Janai at 23%, Trey Donaldson at 12%. Nobody's voted for Jalen yet on Twitter. I'm kind of
Nah,
surprised. And
no.
Jackson sent us the Reddit poll for the MVP vote. Ribs and whiskey, the only reasonable choice after a sweep is Broom. I love that. RG23216 says Janai. AU Bear 11885. I'm stating Jalen was the rock throughout. Janai built the comeback and CBM finished them off. I defer to the experts. I don't know if we're experts. We're just fans, man. Uh, Big Bad Brindle Dog. With what Jalen said happened at the half, it's got to be CBM. Tone opposite 9668. Janai number one, CBM number two, Denver number three, endless 3A is Flanagan. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. War D Eagle says, got to be Janai. Dude turned it on. Keep cool, Coolidge. Actually, pretty close tonight, in my opinion. It's Janai, though. 7 assists. Is that a career high? I feel like it is.
It's got to be close if it's not.
And then AU Art says CBM for the locker room ass chewing. All right, Matt, it's your podcast. I will defer to you, but I do want to point out a couple of things before I say my vote. Points in the paint, obviously huge. That's Janai territory all the way. We won that 44-32. That's a 12-point difference. We won by 14. But what makes the difference for me is go to the bench. The bench for Auburn finished with 36 points. The bench for Ole Miss finished with 8. I know Chad Baker Mazara is basically a starter in the way that he plays minutes, but he does come off the bench. And between
Mm-hmm.
that and the locker room speech, I got to go CBM for my vote.
It's so hard, man. Like this is if I would be tempted to split this one if we had said we weren't splitting anymore because they really both played really impactful roles. And again, I think the overall story of this game is the depth and the amount of weapons we have, and I think that's why we won. I think that shows up in the bench points, like you said, that shows up in the energy stats, the ability to finish a 40-minute game. Um, I'm cool with it. If for no other reason than Chad Baker Mazara and his crew, love the pod. So, and we
And we love
know
them.
and like the thing with Janai is, right, like Janai's going to be the MVP a lot of nights. Like he just is, and he has been this year, and he is our leader probably on offense. He's our most consistent weapon, and it's just hard not to try to take that for granted. It is hard for me to say that though because like I keep looking.
Okay, well, hang on, because we did have Ryan Norman hop in here. Ryan Storm Norman. He's actually out of the country right now and is still invested in Auburn basketball. Ryan's voting Janai. So Matt, before you announce, take that into consideration. You got me voting CBM. Storm Norman here is voting for Janai, and he wants me to check the YouTube chat. So let
I
me do
think it
that real
might
quick.
be it might be private, unfortunately. I think I did. I was going to ask you. I don't know why, but when I'm looking at it, it's coming up private with no comment. So I don't know why that is.
All right,
Um,
hang on. I'm pulling it up here.
but
Pocket Watch. Let's see. Oh, Pocket Watch is on the way back from Oxford. Oh boy. Yeah,
Pocket
no.
Watch.
Right now it's just Pocket Watch and Storm and Norman in the chat. I'm not seeing any votes from Pocket Watch yet.
Okay.
But
Well, I
Matt, you got two votes. You got one for Janai, you got one for CBM. You're the tiebreaker, man.
okay. If I'm the tiebreaker, I'm gonna probably reverse course. I just keep looking at this and be like, can we really? Watching the game, it felt like Janai. Like I think a lot of people could agree with that. And when you put up 15, 9, and 7, like he had 7
And Matt,
assists.
Matt, Jackson's not here, but you can't forget the most important stat
The
because we
blocks.
talked about it already with the block of Alan Flanagan into a three-pointer that was just one of the most incredible turnaround sequences that I've seen when it really felt like we put this game out of reach. But Janai was a shot blocking force tonight with Jamarian Sharp out of the game. Janai finished with 3 blocks. 3 blocks.
Love it. You love to see it. I think okay, we're going with Janai. I've decided. I know I said Chad Baker Mazara. Chad Baker Mazara, we still love you. Great game. We're supportive. But Janai, man, like I think this game really showcased his versatility, and he did it when we were down and when we were coming back and when we were trying to hold the lead. And he did it from three. He did it on defense. He did it inside, and he did it. I've noticed this, Ben. He's doing the too small thing less. He didn't really do it until he was in like this peak elite dominant level, like the seventh or eighth possession in a row. And I think that's even a little bit of a he was doing his business for most of this game, and then it got fun there at the end when he was just destroying people. And it felt like a Janai MVP game watching it. And if you're going to talk about a historic second half on offense, I think a lot of it ran through him.
Yeah, I mean, we can't take Janai Broom and his greatness for granted. We've been spoiled with centers the last couple of years, so it's an easy thing to do. But I mean, the stat line, the way that he absolutely took over the game, the things that he was able to do all across the court, it's hard to imagine it could be anybody else. If it wasn't for Chad Baker Mazara's motivating factor, it wouldn't even be a question for me. He was so far and away the best player on that court. All right, it's official. The Jungle Podcast crowning Janai Broom MVP. Get your broom out for the sweep, baby.
It's a sweep. It's broom. I love whoever made that comment. I think we got to get Pocket Watch on the pod. I think Pocket Watch has earned a YouTube live appearance or a pod or something, whatever he wants. Um, so
Be
shout
careful.
out.
Be careful, Pocket Watch. They're gonna make you start doing it every week like me.
Yeah, maybe not whatever you want, but let's get to. Well, I do want to mention Denver. We touched on. Cheney did a couple nice things. Chris Moore hit a three. You love to see that. Dylan did his thing, being a great defender, verticality. Lior played his one rotation. Denver, another double-digit game on the road. Again, doing his job on defense. He is struggling going to the basket, like turning the ball over a couple times, not always finish. He had a couple nice ones today, but even as just a in the NBA, it's 3-and-D guys, right? Like 3-point
Yep.
shooters and guys who can defend. And Denver has kind of turned into that for us. And he's one of those guys. Like if we can start penciling in 10 or 12 points from him a game, that's going to be huge.
And especially when he can be efficient doing it. I think that was one of the issues that we had with Aiden initially, is we were getting those 10 points a game from Aiden, but it was taking 10, 11, 12 shots sometimes. Denver Jones, 4 of 8 from the floor, 2 of 5 from 3, hit his only free throw. He grabbed 3 rebounds and had an assist. I mean, just an all around even game playing 26 minutes.
All right, let's unless you have anything other on any of the players, I think it would be interesting.
I do want to talk a little bit about Chaney Johnson's evolution as a defender.
Okay.
One of the things that I think we noticed early on was him struggling to find his spot in rotations. One of the great things about this roster is we're switching all the way through. We don't mind when Janai is out there or when Dylan Cardwell is out there, switching a guard onto them and having them try to drive on those big guys. Bruce Pearl switches all the way across the floor. But when you're willing to do that, teams are going to run these trap flexes and try to get you out of position and sneak somebody in the back door. And earlier, especially in early SEC play, we were seeing folks run around Chaney Johnson because they knew if we could throw enough action at him, we're going to get confused about where his spot is on the floor and what man he's got. And we've been seeing that less and less and less as we get deeper into SEC play. I think offense can be iffy. We got an amazing offensive performance tonight. I don't think we should expect to see an offense this good on the road the rest of the season. But this defense has traveled every single time. And as long as the defense continues to improve, they're going to keep putting us in position to win these games and take advantage of home teams' mistakes.
I love that you mentioned that. I think they said we were, second in the SEC in field goal percentage defense. So at this point in the season, that's a pretty valuable statistic because you've played 20 plus games. We are holding teams to a low shooting percentage in general. I know Stephen Pearl talked about we held Alabama and Mississippi State in those losses to their lowest offensive efficiency of the season. So, You're right. We are doing some nice things defensively. And this was, just so everybody understands, this was, when you get into some of the really nerdy numbers, this was one of the most efficient halves of basketball on the road for Auburn in decades. It really going back to the beginning of some of these metrics. So,
at least since the beginning of KenPom.
This was a fairly historic second half, and it felt that way. It was a really good performance. Honestly, Chris Beard kind of mentioned this. It's not like Ole Miss really even played terribly in the second half. It's just Auburn was hitting a lot of shots, getting a lot of really good looks, sharing the ball. You talked about 25 assists, Ben, 25 assists on 35 made shots. We even had 11 turnovers again in double digits, and Ole Miss only had 8. But man, when you're going 25 to 11 ratio, that is huge. So I'm glad you mentioned that. The offense doesn't have to do this all the time. But obviously, when you can shoot, getting into some of the team stats, like, you shoot 55% from the field because you're just, you mentioned it, second half, downhill, inside, Jalen, Janai, driving to the basket from the guards, and then 44% from 3. Now, Ole Miss shot 42% because they started out really hot. They were over 50 in the first half.
I think they finished 6 for 11 at halftime.
Yeah, so, I mean, we lost the turnover battle. We lost what else? Something else I saw earlier we didn't kill it in. I guess it was turnovers, points off, steals. We didn't really dominate, but the rebounding, you mentioned it, man. Like and the offensive rebounding in the first half. So many of our 3-pointers we made in the first half when we were down and trailing that we needed those shots were off offensive rebounds.
Yep.
We missed a shot, we got it, kicked it out, hit an open look. So that was great to see.
And Ole Miss shot really well, but we limited them to 9 second chance points, which means they weren't getting a lot of their second chance things that we'd seen Alabama get, that we'd seen Mississippi State get, that secondary look at the basket. So they were hitting shots, and they were hitting a lot of shots, but they were tough, challenged shots. Mm-hmm. And the way that you beat a team like that is you just shoot better.
Yes.
And I think tonight we finally saw us crest that hill. We've been saying on this show a lot that the shots that we've been taking on the road have not been bad, particularly when Jalen was in that 0 for 8 stretch against Alabama, Mississippi State. They were good looks. They were in rhythm. They just weren't falling. Today was a game where they fell at a really, really great clip.
We've got to. I also want to mention, like, just giving Ole Miss a look there. We really did a great job on. We did a great job on everybody in that Ole Miss game at home. We really clamped them down. Today, in this game, you saw a lot more of the how Ole Miss has won 18 games. I mean, they have the same record as us. They're 18-4, and I mean, Morel's a great scorer. Flanagan had 20. Now he had 3 turnovers and 6 of 15 from the field. Not super efficient, but Flanagan played well. Brakefield played well. And then, Brandon Murray's a really emerging player for them too. Had, 3 for 4 shooting. So like we kind of saw the Ole Miss, and then Cisse inside was really good. He had a lot of alley-oop dunks and stuff. So they played well. If you look at their numbers, they shot 45%, they shot 40 plus from three, they only turned it over 8 times, and they scored 77 at home. They're probably like, hey, we probably win, right? No, Auburn goes on a crazy spree and scores 90 plus.
Right. And again, we talked about that a little bit with the Mississippi State game when we had, some hero shots at the end there that kept the game away from us. That when you play a team in their house, they're going to play really, really well. And what you have to be prepared to do is take advantage of their mistakes. We made quite a few mistakes. It was a pretty uncharacteristic first half for us. I think we finished the first half with 8 turnovers. We only had 3 the rest of the way. And I believe Ole Miss finished the first half without turning the ball over once.
Mm.
And you had a feeling that that probably wasn't going to hold. But the question was, is this team going to be ready to take advantage when they're put in a position to do it? And they just, I can't gush enough about how this team answered the bell in such a big way, because we've seen this team mount ridiculous comebacks. We watched them come back and take the lead at Alabama. We watched them come back and take the lead at Miss State. We watched them come back and put themselves in position to steal one against Appalachian State in our other loss this season. And we just weren't able to get over that hump. And I was so impressed with our shot selection and our patience in the half court. And I just feel like a lot of that has to do with having Denver steering the ship in those key moments.
It's contagious too. I mean, like some of the ball sharing was really good, and it goes back to how we've seen this team operate. We know it's not going to be every game all the time, but like when this team is humming offensively, I wouldn't expect this second half on the road. But like we've shown we can do that. I mean, we've shown when we start moving the ball, and Bruce has said a few times, like there's just a comfort level when your offense is in front of you on your side of the floor. And, I wondered about that as I was watching it. Like, man, the team's right in front of them. They're dialed in. And Janai, the other piece you mentioned in the first half, Janai had 0 points. So if you're down 9 on the road, you're hitting shots, you're getting good looks, you're playing decent defense, and you're like, oh, man, well, Janai hadn't scored. And, all these facts, like you said, we haven't turned them over at all. So it was ripe for a comeback, but to come back and then it wasn't close at the end. We really got that separation, and we're in a great position for really the last 6, 7, 8 minutes of the game.
Yep, we got to that space that that I was begging for the last week. Is that when you get and take back a lead, you have to do what Baylor did to us, which is just stretch it 2 points at a time. You get a 1-point lead. Now it's a 3-point lead. Now it's a 5-point lead. Now they've gone down and they've shot another 3 that's clanged out because they're feeling the panic. You go down, score 2 more. Now it's a 7-point lead. You look up, there's 6 minutes left. The mat system is in effect. Now they're chasing. Now the whole of your offense is open to you. The whole of the shot clock is open to you. There's no urgency on your offensive part. You can really take your time and look for the mistakes. And I think we did such a great job of that tonight. Or last
I also
night.
thought it was a small, we keep forgetting it's not tonight. I also thought it was a small thing, and we were going to win anyway, probably, but Trey did finish the last stretch of the game. I thought we did a great job of slowing it down when the game was starting to get out of reach and we could really suck the life out of the game. We did a good job running shot clock. We didn't do anything too crazy. So that was good to see. And honestly, I like the swagger we played with. On the road, when you get challenged, that's a hostile environment. I know we all, flip the bird at everybody at all these games, but there was a lot of Ole Miss kids like engaging with our guys in the first half. I don't know if that was a Flanagan thing or if that's just where they're at. I don't know. It was. Pretty...
I think it's a little bit where Ole Miss is feeling their oats right now. They've had a pretty middling program and they've had some success against Auburn in the past. And again, this was just a huge game for them in terms of what this season was going to look like. Are they going to contend for that double bye? Are they maybe going to sneak around and only have 4 losses and be in contention for a championship? It may be that the league champion this year has 4 losses. It's
Could be.
entirely possible. But all of that goes away if you can't hold serve at home. And so I
Yeah.
think there was a lot of swagger and a lot of energy. And I think that may have been what we lit into in the half is like, hey, they don't deserve any of that. We've got the number next to our name.
Hmm.
We've been the ones who've been leading the SEC until we let go of that rope just a little bit. And now look, everybody's coming for us. Well,
Yeah.
when you come for the king, you best not miss.
Well, I got three storylines, then we can talk SEC stuff. Number
All
one,
right.
we touched on it. The Trey Aiden thing is definitely interesting. I don't know if we've had. I'm trying to remember a starting lineup position that's gone. We Bruce has switched at times, but I don't remember when this ever switched back. And if this were to stay the same, it's not a huge deal. They're both playing significant minutes. They're both going to continue to be important parts of this team in this rotation. But I do think it feels like maybe the staff has seen this is two games in a row. They've seen enough that maybe they're going to stick with this. Both Aiden and Denver were sat or they didn't start in the what game was that? Was it Mississippi State? No.
Yeah, Mississippi State.
Okay, maybe it was that. So now two games in a row. Denver's back in the starting lineup, but Aiden is not. I kind of like what you're saying. Aiden still provides a spark off the bench. You're big about always talking about that. He can shoot. And I think his passing, I thought his passing was really good. He always has the one. He got away with a bunch of really great look ahead fast break passes in non conference, and it's just not working in SEC
It's
play.
really not.
But outside of that, I thought he was flawless running the offense today. Like he took maybe one shot that was forced, but I mean, when you're an elite 3-point shooter, which I will continue to defend him, that I think he has that potential. I'm okay with it. So I just think that dynamic is definitely something to watch. And I kind of agree with you. I think Trey starts and finishes games maybe for at least for now and plays about this kind of minute breakdown.
Yeah, and I think again the nice thing for Aiden is that when Trey is playing those minutes, it doesn't force him to become the guy. He doesn't need to go out there and hit a 3-pointer every time he's on the floor. He can just go out there and be himself and play his game. And I think that makes a huge difference for what he's able to do in this offense. I mean, he's an 18-year-old kid. Ryan has done a really great job in our group chat of pointing out that, like, hey, look, there's film out on him now. People know his strengths, people know his weaknesses. People are going to try and throw a lot of stuff at him. And where Aiden has always been his strongest is when he's been able to rely on the rest of his team, which is what he's able to do now. When he's coming in, he's not coming in as like hey, we're expecting you to either get the ball to Janai or hit a 3-pointer. It's like, no, he's going out there with that second unit. He can be a little aggressive if he needs to, but he can also just facilitate. And he's still elite as a facilitator. He had 3 assists and only 1 turnover tonight. So you're seeing once again, he's able to protect the ball, which is so huge from our point guards in the system.
Yeah.
And, I'm probably the biggest fan of Trey on this podcast. And I think he's just a steadier hand right now
Yeah.
in this offense with this first team. And I think we're probably going to see Trey start the rest of the way.
He very well could, and he continues to be one of our best 3-point shooters, and he doesn't force anything. It's open threes, it's in rhythm threes, and I think he does a great job selflessly running the offense. I really do, and I like him on defense too. So I wouldn't be surprised. That was one thing I wanted to point out. Number two, you mentioned having a book out on somebody. I was captivated in the first half when Auburn was running offense in front of the Ole Miss bench. Wes Flanagan was right there in the lead seat, furthest to the left, calling out every motion, every action. He knows the sets. Now, maybe there's some new ones this year. We're obviously doing some different stuff, but like, it was just I couldn't help but watch it because I was like, oh, this is fascinating because not
Mm-hmm.
only does Coach Flanagan know the plays, he also knows our players so well. So many of these
Yep.
returning guys, and he's calling out like, "Hey, here's what you need to do." Like there was a time where the whole Ole Miss bench knows KD's gonna jack a three. Now he made it, but like they know, and they're all yelling like right when he gets the ball on a kick out or a quick rebound or something, and like it's going up. You got to get on him. And they knew what was another thing. There were some subtle things about Jalen. I think they knew. So I just think it's a good job by Auburn to sweep this team with that knowledge on the other side and with an NCAA tournament team in Ole Miss. I was just fascinated by that chess match that had to have been going on between Auburn's coaching staff, who we love and who we know the kind of scouts they do, the kind of work they do, and Wes Flanagan and Chris Beard being on the other side. I thought that was really interesting television.
Oh yeah, and Wes Flanagan was one of our best recruiters, but he was no slouch in the preparation either. Go back and listen to our interview with Wes Flanagan. He was one of the first coaches to talk about how Bruce Pearl's staff gets individual scouts. And it would not surprise me in the least if when Wes Flanagan came to Ole Miss, he said, "Give me the Auburn scout.
Yeah.
I want to be the one who's going to build the game plan for this team." I think he did a great job. I think Ole Miss came out fast. They came out hard. But what happened in the end was we were just a deeper team. I think Ole Miss's stars shined about as bright as they could have. And yeah, they put us in a lot of tough spots, but we hit tough shots. We stayed with it. We played within ourselves, and we were a better team.
Here's the third thing that I think is really interesting. I noticed in the second half. Now, this could be just because things were going really well, but it's something I'm watching. Have you noticed in the second half of some of these games, Jalen and Janai are just out there for long. Occasionally, they've been out there for long stretches, and I don't think anybody would confuse Jalen or Janai for being like, the most elite endurance, high level athletes. They are great college basketball players, and I'm not trying to talk any, but you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like there's been times, especially with Jalen, where it's like he's on the floor for the last 10 or 12 minutes of the game because they don't want to give Chaney another look too late in the game when things are tight. Well, today, I noticed specifically that both Dylan and Chaney got in these quick little 1 or 2 minute substitutions, like with 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes left in the second half. And I really like that. If you can steal some possessions and break up some of those minutes, I don't know if that really makes a huge difference in a lot of these games, but I just like that it seemed different to me enough to mention on the pod. And I'm hoping that maybe we can utilize some of that strategy moving forward.
And again, it just feels like smart coaching because there's typically going to be some kind of TV timeout inside of the 10-minute mark. If there hasn't been a significant stoppage of play at the first timeout, that rotation is going to be a little bit shorter. And I think we're preparing for that a little bit better. And it helped having the lead down to single digits at that time. But yeah, this ability to steal these sorts of rests and possessions for our top two guys is going to be huge going down the stretch. And that's where you've really got to trust this coaching staff.
Yeah. I just liked it. Again, Jackson always likes signs of like we're trying things. That felt like a thing that was different to me in this game. So great win. Quad one win, which we desperately needed. The most important thing is it keeps us in our same position in the SEC race, which I guess we can. Do you have anything else on the game? I kind of gave you my 3 random things.
I think we've gushed enough about this one. It's time to move on. We got listen. We got a big one behind us. We got another big one right in front of us. It's going to be that way for the next 3 weeks, boys and girls. Buckle in.
It is, and I want to just walk through the standings and then walk through, Alabama coming up because I think.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean this is where it gets fun and stressful. So Alabama, this is the halfway point for almost everybody. Tennessee has not played. Everybody gets one little bye. We get ours in a couple of weeks in the midweek. Tennessee's already had theirs. So Alabama's at 8-1. South Carolina and Auburn are at 7-2. Tennessee's at 6-2. And maybe one of the most important things about this game, and you kind of hinted at it, is we've got a full 2-game lead over 5th place for that top 4 positioning. And that's Ole Miss, Kentucky, and Florida are all right there. So Tennessee, South Carolina, and Alabama are the title contenders with us right now. You mentioned it could change. And Alabama comes to Neville Arena Wednesday night. Alabama already won on their home court. This feels, the jungle's going to be insane. The atmosphere is going to be insane. This is a huge game.
Yeah, the downside of this one is that we've lost our margin for error. We steal one in Tuscaloosa, or even if we steal one in Starkville, we have a margin for error.
Right.
But Alabama has played so well that the margin for error is gone now. We got to have it if we're going to stay in this conference title race. I think we're still in good position no matter what for one of those top 4 seeds for sure. But this is, we had a gotta have it game this week. We got another one coming up next week. And then we can't breathe because I think the week after that, we have a midweek game in Gainesville where we have not won in at least a couple of decades.
Well, and you're right. And I think that's a good way to frame it. It feels like most likely if we're going to win the conference championship regular season this year, you got to beat Alabama and pull even with them and pull into a tie for first place. Like it really does feel that you don't want to go 2 games down to Alabama. I don't know if with our schedule and with how they're playing and how Tennessee's playing, I just don't like those odds. So we got to protect home court, like you said. Any kind of win against Alabama is a good one. It is a huge game. Now, like you said, if we lose, it stinks to get swept by Alabama. We'll be really mad. But we're in a great spot for tournament seeding, SEC standing, all that good stuff. But if we're going to really go for this, we've put ourselves in a good position. If you can pull yourself into a, you know, first place tie in the SEC with 8 games to play, this is your opportunity to do it, and it's your only opportunity to control your destiny with how Alabama's going to lose. This is the only chance to get them.
I
So,
think that's the hardest part is that you want to stay in control.
yes,
And the way that you stay in control is by number one, continuing to protect home court, make teams afraid to come in and play in your house. And number two is by showing that like, hey, we can beat the best teams in the SEC. We haven't had that chance yet, except for in Tuscaloosa. Mississippi State is starting to fall off a little bit. We're starting to see the rest of the league begin to expose some of their weaknesses, especially on the road. Same goes for A&M. A&M, the conference is pretty much out of reach. It's not for Kentucky yet. Kentucky could still figure some stuff out, but everybody's seen that Kentucky is beatable. South Carolina went into Rupp and beat them. Tennessee went into Rupp and hung 100 points on them. I mean, right now Tennessee is really looking like the class of the league, which also fills me with disgust because we've got to go to
yeah,
Knoxville.
yeah,
But
we don't like that.
yeah, for all the reasons, this is the big one. You got to beat Alabama because right now they took first place from us. We were undefeated. They took first place from us and we were tied with them. And then we lost to Mississippi State. And now they've been in sole possession of first place for a week. It's time for that to be done. It's time for us to take it back.
Yeah, there is some pessimism. I mean, Alabama's playing really well, and I think
They are. And
unfortunately,
that's part of why you got it. That's why you got to beat them when you got them at home.
yes, yes. But the optimism is we played really bad on the road in the first half. There, we still almost won on the road in a place where they had. I don't know if they've lost at home. Maybe I think they did lose somebody in
They
non-conference,
lost
but
to they lost to Clemson, but they haven't lost in conference.
right. So I mean, they're really good.
I mean,
But just if you want
the
some
analytics have borne
optimism,
that out. The
we
analytics
again
have borne
metrics
that out
don't
all
win you
year.
games
True.
all year. And we're after yesterday's game. I mean, we are between 4 and 8 nationally in all these key you sent it out in our group chat, like BPI, KenPom Net, anything you want to look at. We're right there in the top 10 of the country. So we really shouldn't back down from anybody with this group 22 games in. The analytics become more trustworthy the longer you go. And look, we're going to have to hit shots. We're going to have to defend really well. And we're going to have to find a way to defend them at the 3-point line and at the rim. They do such a good job of really focusing their offense in those two areas. And I'm sure we will have some ideas of how to do that, but it's going to be a fun one, man. Wednesday night, it's going to be a great game.
Yeah, I can't wait. We're going to be live after that one for sure. I don't know if Matt's going to be with me. Hopefully we'll maybe be able to get Jackson or Ryan back in as well. But it's going to be huge. It's going to be big. It's what you want in a rivalry. Right now, the state of Alabama is where the class of SEC basketball is happening, and we're going to have a barn burner Wednesday night.
And this is where I'm contractually obligated to remind all of us that it wasn't always like this. Halfway through the SEC schedule to be playing for first place at home against your rival in a nationally ranked matchup. That is a pretty rarefied air in the state of Alabama historically and in
Oh
Auburn's
yeah.
history for sure. So, Ben, fun to talk about a great win. We had a couple tough losses to talk about, and then the Vandy game that we didn't really care as much about. Great to sweep the Flanagans. Great to sweep Ole Miss. Great to have a chance
Great
to
for
take.
Matt to ruin my graphic. I've been over here working on a brand new one because he usurped the MVP vote on me. But you know what, Janai Broom, you had such an excellent game. I'm not that mad about it.
If we could honestly, we can keep it CBM. I don't care. They were both
No,
really
no, no,
good.
no, 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 no. It's been called. You know how mad Jackson will be if we flip flop. It's Janai. It's
It
Janai.
was
Come
a
on.
tough call. We love both of them. Anyway, Ben, thanks for hopping on. Sorry it's a day late, everybody, but it happens sometimes with life. And we will be with you here after the